certain headlines related to Mr. Depp and various news coverage related to Mr. Depp. Do you have an opinion about the impact of those articles that you looked at with Mr. Nadelhoff on cross-examination on Mr. Depp's reputation in Hollywood?
Again, I don't remember all the articles, but what I do know is that Johnny Depp had always had articles about him, and that didn't change the baseline. If you had a big project and it had a role for Johnny Depp, that didn't change the baseline.
Is your opinion about the op-ed Ms. Heard authored different than that?
My opinion about the op-ed in the Washington Post was a different. That was had a different quality of headline and article.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
All right. Is this witness subject to recall?
He is, Your Honor.
All right, sir, since you're subject to recall, the rule of witness does apply for you, so you cannot discuss your testimony and did not watch any of the case. Okay, sir? But you're free to go today, sir. Okay, thank you. All right, watch your step. All right, your next witness.
Plaintiff calls Douglas Banya, Your Honor.
Okay. Can you spell that last name for me?
B-A-N-I-A.
Thank you.
Your Honor, may I approach for just a moment?
Okay, sure. Mr. Nadelhoff.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm to testify truthfully in this case with penalty of law?
Good afternoon, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Mr. Banya. Will you please state your full name for the record?
Yes, Douglas Banya.
And Mr. Banya, what do you do for work?
I am an intellectual property damages and valuation expert.
Do you have any particular specialty in your line of work?
Yes, my specialty is using internet and social media analysis when I'm quantifying value, or I'm calculating damages, or if I'm analyzing the impact of social media or internet events. 10 years.
What's your position?
I'm a founding principal and an analyst.
I'd like to talk a little bit about your educational background for a moment. Where did you attend college?
I received my bachelor's degree in cinema from San Diego State University. I graduated in 1997.
And after you graduated in 1997, did you pursue another degree?
Yes, I went directly to San Diego State University. I got a master's degree in television, film, new media production.
Was there any particular reason you chose to go to San Diego State for that?
The new media production side of that program I really liked. I graduated from there in 2000, so this is even before YouTube was found. So the whole idea of putting film on the internet and kind of analyzing the internet and using analytic tools to see how things are doing on the internet is that's what attracted me, and that's what I learned there as well.
What did you do after you got your master's degree?
After the master's degree, I moved to Los Angeles, and I was an independent filmmaker for a while. Then I got introduced to intellectual property, and I started working for a small boutique IT firm back in San Diego.
What was the boutique firm you went to?
What was the name of the firm?
Yes.
The name of the firm was Consor.
And what did Consor do?
Consor values intellectual property for various business reasons. They do litigation support services as well.
And when you say intellectual property, what do you mean?
When I talk about intellectual property, I'm mostly talking about copyrights, patents, and trademarks. I might include related intangible assets such as domain names, websites, internet accounts. But IP for me is mostly brands, publicity rights, copyrights, trademarks.
What type of work did you do while you were at Consor?
I have various positions there, but I was a research analyst, as a financial analyst. I was a director of business development. My last position there was a principal.
And what kinds of things did you work on?
We worked on, valuation. Our clients, they needed valuation of their IP portfolio for maybe tax or estate reasons. A lot of litigation support like I'm doing now. Somebody infringes on a trademark or publicity rights. That was actually the place I got my first expert witness job. I was a named expert on a right of publicity case representing the retired players of the NFL against the NFL. They're using their name and likeness without permission. So services such as that.
How long did you work at Consor?
I was at Consor for 10 years.
And after Consor, where did you work?
Then at Nevium, where I am now.
And did you found Nevium?
Yes.
What kind of work does Nevium do?
Nevium does several things, provides several services, but we value intellectual property for various reasons, tax, estate, M&A, business transactions. We not only provide the value of a business, but we can break that value. What percent of the value is this trademark portfolio or this patent portfolio? We do litigation support, so like I'm here, I testify in cases, maybe a false endorsement case. Somebody uses celebrity's name and likeness without permission. Maybe there's a trademark infringement case and use the brand without permission. A defamation case such as this. What's the impact of something that was posted online? So the third kind of bucket of services we offer is brand monetization strategies. So I think the best way to explain that is companies have business plans, they have marketing plans, they don't have IP plans. So we come in and work with customers, with our clients, understand their business and their marketing plans, and help them build an IP plan that fits in with those two so they can essentially make more money off their branded products and services. And I think what's important with all that is, what differentiates us with competitors is we use internet and website analytic tools and everything we do. Everything is online now, and understanding those tools when calculating value or calculating damages is important.
Do you have any professional certifications?
I am a certified licensing professional. That is a designation given by the Licensing Executive Society, LES. LES is a not-for-profit organization that supports professionals like me who deal with a lot of licensing. I'm a Google Analytics individual, the Google Analytics individual qualification. That is a test given by Google for those that understand and pass a test related to internet analytics.
Can you explain a little bit about what Google Analytics is?
Yeah, so Google Analytics is a web service provided by Google, and it's used by business owners and website owners to understand the traffic that comes to their websites. So essentially, once you sign up for your Google Analytics account, you're given a bit of code, and you embed that code into various your web pages. Then you can log in and you can see who's coming to my website, what are they doing, and really it's essentially a tool for search engine optimization. The goal of the web is to show up number one in Google Organic. So then you'll tweak your website a bit, you'll look at your analytics, see if you're showing up on the first page of Google. If not, you can use those analytics to keep playing around and try to end up on the first page of Google.
Are you a member of any professional organizations?
I'm a member of the International Trademark Association. That is an organization. They're actually having their annual conference here in DC, so I hopping back and forth to that. I'm on their right of publicity panel. I just gave a presentation on Monday. I'm a non-attorney member of the American Bar Association. I'm on their copyright and social media committee.
Your Honor, at this point, plaintiff would offer Mr. Banya as an expert in internet and social media analytics.
All right, any objection? All right, so moved. Thank you.
Mr. Banya, what were you asked to do in this case?
I was asked to analyze the impact of the allegations of domestic abuse made by Ms. Heard as it relates to her 2016 restraining order, and then asked to also analyze the republication of that alleged abuse in her 2018 Washington Post op-ed.
What work have you done in connection with forming your opinions relative to that?
So I identified the best tools to use in this case, which are Q-scores, Google Trends, and historic Google search results.
You used a few terms in there. I just want to break them down a little bit. What's a Q-score?
A Q-score is, there's a Q-score company that's been around for about 50 years, and what they do is they measure how well a brand or a celebrity or sports character is known and how much they're liked, and they also measure how much they're disliked.
Who else besides you uses Q-scores?
Q-scores are used by, any company that, organizations that license in a celebrity or a brand to endorse their product or service. The PGA Golf Tour is actually using Q-scores right now. They're using Q-scores in Google search results. They have a pool of $40 million that they're doling out to their players. So depending on their Google search results
SEO
and
guy.
Q-scores and other
Same like
metrics,
me.
I'm sure they're using those to divide up that pool of money.
And I think you also mentioned Google Trends. What's that?
Yeah, Google Trends is another service offered by Google. As you know, everything starts with a Google search these days. There's 5 billion daily searches on Google. And Google Trends allows a user like me or you to go into Google Trends and analyze search traffic for various key terms, anything you really want. Maybe there's a new football player and you want to see how that football player is trending compared to the team over time, or maybe something related to Ukraine, or maybe a celebrity. So Google Trends just shows you what kind of search volume is happening during various points of time.
What are historical Google search results?
So historical Google search results are using Google. There's actually an area where you can go back in time and see what was showing up in Google during that time. And it's really the best indication of what websites would have appeared back in time. Oftentimes, working with my monetization clients, we want to know, hey, how were you ranking years ago for your branded service or your branded company? It will go back in time and look, and then in litigation, we're always going back in time, so we want to figure out what was most likely happening, what websites were served back then. And when you know what websites were served back then, you typically know what people were reading and thinking about.
Why did you choose these particular tools for your analysis in this case?
Well, the Q-scores, I really thought it was the best idea to understand Mr. Depp's Q-scores right before 2016, before the abuse allegations, just to see where he is at. Then I wanted to see his Q-scores right after the 2016 alleged abuse allegations. And then I wanted to see his Q-scores after the 2018 Washington Post op-ed, just to see if there was any changes during that period of time.
And what about your decision to use Google Trends and historical Google search results?
Yeah, I felt that those two tools together were perfect, because what I wanted to do is understand, as I mentioned, everyone's going to Google to figure things out. What were people when people Googled Johnny Depp prior to these alleged abuse allegations, what websites were coming up and what was the public consuming about him. Then I wanted to know that after, and then after the op-ed. So I used Google Trends just to identify the dates in time, in which then I went into the historic Google search results. I searched for Mr. Depp, and then I changed those dates to go back in time, and then I analyzed the top 3 websites of each search.
Based on the analysis you did in this case, have you formed any opinions?
Yeah, my analysis shows that prior to 2016 and the allegations, the abuse allegations, Mr. Depp was not portrayed in a negative connotation. That's the first thing that I identified.
Did you form any other conclusions?
I realized that those websites that were coming up were mostly about his career, his characters, Johnny Depp as the individual, his interests. Then after the 2016 mark, the majority of those results turned into negative things about the abuse allegations. And then even more so after the op-ed, there seemed to be kind of a theme or a flavor of not only the abuse allegations, but his drinking and drug use. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Banya, have you prepared a demonstrative that depicts how you used Google Trends in this case?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, we'd like permission to approach that for copy. Banya demonstrative A. And just for the record, we've marked these as plaintiffs 1236 for identification.
1236 for identification. Do you want to publish it to the jury?
Yes, please.
Okay.
And Mr. Banya, can you explain for the jury what is depicted in this demonstrative that you prepared?
Yes. So this is the Google Trends data. You're going to see that it runs from 2004 into 2020, and you're going to notice the different spikes. Those spikes represent when people were searching for Mr. Depp. You're going to also notice here I've got the red line just showing the date when Ms. Heard filed the restraining order. Oh, can I write on this?
You can touch the screen. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yeah, so here I'm talking about, in this line here, is just the date and time in which Ms. Heard alleged the abuse and filed the restraining order. And then this line here is the December 18th, 2018 op-ed. And what I wanted to do is identify the peaks of interest in Mr. Depp. And you're going to notice here, I found 17 spikes of interest that I analyzed. And then the 51 key web pages we're going to get into later, I've analyzed the top 3 search results for each spike. And then here I analyzed the 7 spikes after, the 2016 allegations of abuse, and then again after the December 18th, 2018 op-ed.
Once you determined these spikes, the periods of significant interest in searches for Johnny Depp on Google, what did you do with that information?
So, again, the purpose of using Google Trends was just to understand when there's the most interest in Johnny Depp, because for some reason something was going on in the news, in the media, people are turning to Google to search for Mr. Depp. So then I went to my web browser, and then I searched for Johnny Depp in Google. But before I did so, I have a separate web browser. I call it my Workbench browser. I don't log into anything. It's important to be logged out of Google because Google keeps a profile on you, and your search results could be biased based on that profile. Then also when you go into a web browser, you have to clear your cache, you have to clear your history, clear all your data, and make sure you can get the most unbiased search results as possible. So I went into Google, I typed in Johnny Depp, and then I searched and set the time periods for the various points here that you see labeled with letters.
Do you have a demonstrative that shows an example of one of those points that you examined?
Yes.
Okay. Tom, could we go to the second Vanya demonstrative, please?
Yeah, so this is an example of, I believe it was spike or .0 in the Google Trends. So what I did is I went into Google, I cleared everything as I told you, made sure I was logged out of Google, and here you can see I typed in Johnny Depp, I hit the search, and then what I did is went to this tool area, which pulls a drop-down area for the date, and I set the date to match these top 3 websites that came up. I downloaded those websites, and then I analyzed them.
So did you undertake this analysis for each of the 17 points on the prior slide that we looked at?
Yes, correct.
And what did you do once you had your web page results, such as on this demonstrative?
You mean when I reviewed each web page?
Yes.
Yeah, so what I was looking for is, were these web pages or articles, did they have anything to do with the alleged abuse? Did they have anything to do with his alcohol, drug use? Did they have anything to do with his work ethic? So I basically, tried to understand, the content and of each website or article.
Did you look at all of the results that turned up when you ran these historical searches?
I only reviewed the top 3.
Why did you choose the top 3?
So I reviewed the top 3 because the research shows that about 50 to 75% of the people only click on the top 3. So I wanted to get the majority of the searches.
Tom, I think we can take that down for now. Thank you. What did you determine about the results that you found for the period prior to Ms. Heard's first allegations of abuse?
So I determined that, Mr. Depp was not portrayed in any negative connotation. The web results were about his life and his career, his acting, his, pictures of him, relationships he was in, just pretty normal stuff.
And what did you determine about the top results after Ms. Heard's initial allegations in 2016 and then the republication in the op-ed in 2018?
Okay.
Mr. Banya, what did you find about the results of the top web pages that you determined after Ms. Heard's initial allegations and then again after the publication of the op-ed?
Yeah, so after the initial allegations in 2016, I found that the majority of them had to do with the alleged abuse. And then after I realized that the web pages that were dealing with the alleged abuse then started talking about his drinking and drinking and doing drugs. So it appeared to me that they became negative after 2016, but then after 2018, they even included the alleged abuse, but also included the drinking and drug use.
Did you form any opinions about the results that didn't refer to the allegations of abuse?
That didn't. I formed an opinion that I'm not following your question. I'm sorry.
Sorry, we can move on. Did any of the results that you analyzed refer to Mr. Depp's work ethic?
No.
Did you form any overall opinions about the results in the web pages that you looked at following Ms. Heard's accusations of abuse?
Yes, as I stated, prior to 2016, the web pages were just about his daily life and career. After the 2016 marker point, they tended to include, the majority of them included, the allegations of abuse. And then after the 2018 op-ed, the ones that included the allegations of abuse were also talking about drinking and drug use.
What was your overall view of the connotation of those results then?
Yeah, so Mr. Depp was portrayed in a negative connotation after the 2016 allegations of abuse, and even more so after the 2018.
You mentioned you also looked at Q scores as part of your analysis. How are Q scores calculated?
Yeah, so Q scores, it's a survey of 1,800 people that happens twice a year. What they do is it's internet-based, and they measure how well a celebrity or a brand is known, how much they're liked, and how much they're disliked. Q scores, include sports figures, celebrities, even cartoon characters, brands. So that's how the scoring system works.
Do you have a demonstrative that reflects the Q score analysis that you prepared?
Yes.
Tom, could we have demonstrative C, please? And Mr. Vanya, what does this tell us about the Q score analysis that you completed?
Yeah, so what this is saying, again, these spikes are the Google trends that you've already seen, but what I've overlaid are his Q scores shown in the red, green, and purple area. And as you recall, I wanted to find out his Q score prior to the allegations of abuse in 2016, where he had a positive Q score of 11 and a negative Q score, a positive Q score of 35 and a negative Q score of 11. And then I looked at the Q scores after, and then after the op-ed.
And what did you determine about those Q scores?
Yeah, so what you can see here, his positive Q score, which is represented in red, was a 35, and that was prior to the alleged abuse and the restraining order. And then after that, his Q score, positive Q score, dropped to a 31. And what that's saying is less people liked him after the date of the 2016 alleged abuse. And then his negative Q score went up from an 11 to a 16, which is telling you that more people disliked him during that time frame.
And what did you find about the final Q scores that you looked at for Mr. Depp?
Yeah, then you can see the Q score C that I have there in purple. His positive Q score went from a 31 to a 29. His negative Q score went from a 16 to a 15. So now his positive Q score dropped again from a 31 to a 29, meaning less people had a positive impression of Mr. Depp. And then his negative Q score did go from a 16 to a 15, so not as many people disliked Johnny during that time frame.
What are your overall opinions about the Q scores that you analyzed?
So my overall opinions are, as I mentioned earlier, I wanted to analyze the Q scores during this snapshot of time. I wanted to understand what they were before, during, and after the op-ed. And what this tells me is his positive Q score went from a 35 to a 29, and then his negative went from an 11 to a 15. So what the Q-scores is telling me is the public perception of Mr. Depp has been damaged. You know, they like him less and they dislike him more.
Based on all of the analyses that you completed in this case, what are your final opinions about Mr. Depp's reputation over this period of time?
Yeah, so my opinions are that, you know, Mr. Depp was not portrayed in a negative connotation prior to the 2016 allegations of abuse. And then Mr. Depp's image, he was portrayed in a negative connotation after the 2016 allegations of abuse, and then more so after the 2018 Washington Post op-ed. And then the Q scores represent that, you know, the public thinks he's damaged. They think less likely of him. His positive Q score has gone down, and they don't like him even more because his negative Q score went from the 11 to the 15.
I have no further questions of this witness, Your Honor.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and take our afternoon recess of 15 minutes. Do not discuss the case and do not do any outside research. Just stay right there for a second, sir. And sir, since you're in the middle of your testimony, do not discuss your case even with the attorneys at this point or your testimony. Okay, sir?
Okay.
All right.
Thank
You can step down. We'll be back in about 15 minutes.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So let's come back then at 3:35. All right. Does this work? Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor.